I figured it was going to be another uneventful morning on my mountain, until I crested the north ridge and found a luxury cottage planted square in the middle of my land. No permit, no notice, no authority. By sunset, that illegal showpiece was in pieces, and the HOA president who'd ordered it built came fishtailing up the trail in a Porsche, waving forged paperwork and dragging rented muscle behind her. They thought they were bullying a hermit. They didn't realize they'd just picked a fight with a state attorney. Most stories don't open with sirens or lawsuits. They start quiet, like mine did, thin lights sliding through cold pines, smoke from last night clinging to a frosted roof, the world pausing long enough to remember how to inhale. The sun was working the frost bead by bead off the grass. The air tasted like wet stone and resin. Behind me, the workshop still held the deep, sweet smell of walnut from the desk I'd sanded the day before. It was the kind of honest scent that settles into the marrow. Ellie pressed a thermos into my hand, coffee dark enough to wake a dead truck. Right before I stepped out, she gave me the look. The one that means don't come back bleeding because you chased something with teeth again. She's the sensible one. She also knows the woods like to distract me. The plan was simple. Ride the ATV up toward the north ridge, check the boundary markers, clear whatever the last storms had dropped, be home before lunch. Halfway up the ridge, something flashed at the edge of my vision. Too straight, too smooth, too deliberate for a place carved by wind and time. My hand eased off the throttle without asking me. I killed the engine and listened. No chainsaws, no generators, no voices, just the slow, old exhale of the mountain. I stepped forward through the needles. The trees parted, and my stomach dropped straight through me. The structure sat there like it had been cut from a magazine and pasted onto the slope. Wraparound deck, stone columns, floor-to-ceiling glass, fresh sawdust dusting the planks like powdered sugar. Not a hunting shack, not a weekend cabin. A glossy fantasy home in the middle of real wilderness. You don't need a survey to know when something's wrong. But I checked anyway. GPS parcel overlay, digital pins. 20 years of ownership burned into my mind, and every line matched. No confusion, no overlap, no oops, we misread the plat. The house wasn't near my land. It was inside it, deep inside, as if someone believed the mountain belonged to them and had built proof. I didn't march up and start pounding on the door. I didn't shout at empty windows. I did what a state attorney does when something stops making sense. I started building a record. Fear makes people sloppy. Procedure turns them dangerous. And something in my gut said this wasn't a harmless mistake. It was the first move in a bigger game, a game they had no idea they'd already lost. I'm not impulsive. 20 years on this mountain and a life in courtrooms before that taught me two things. The truth doesn't scare, and dirt doesn't lie. I stood there a long moment, letting the sight settle the way a verdict settles into a judge's face. The cottage didn't just exist on my land. It announced itself. It had the arrogance of something built by people who'd never had to ask permission in their lives. Sunlight flared off the glass like a signal mirror. If you didn't know better, you might think it was someone calling for rescue. The only thing lost up here was the person who thought they could hide an entire house from the man who owned the ridge. I walked forward over the gravel they'd laid to make their work easier. Even the gravel annoyed me, not the rock itself but the implication. This job had been planned, graded, materials trucked in, crude, scheduled. That takes time. That takes confidence. And confidence comes from motive. Up close, the details sharpened. The deck wasn't decorative. It was reinforced. Real stone, not veneer. Custom windows built to hold winter heat and trap summer air. Money, not improvisation. This wasn't a weekend warrior project. It was engineered, financed, and very deliberately placed where it had no right to be. I stepped onto the raw deck. New boards, resin still strong. The whole place had that just about to be finished hum, the stage right before tile samples and designer light fixtures arrive. No furniture, no clothes, no toothbrush left in a cup. Just an empty, expensive shell. The front door wasn't even locked. It swung under my hand. Inside, sawdust hung like mist. Wires curled from open boxes. Cabinets lay unopened in cardboard against the wall. Somebody had big intentions. But what hit me first wasn't the layout or the workmanship. It was the silence. Not forest silence. Work crew silence. The kind you get when people leave in a hurry. No tools left behind. No lunch trash. No generators. No contractor placards staked in the dirt. Just fresh tire tracks raked across the back slope, deep ruts from a trailer or heavy hauler, cutting away toward the service road. Whoever built this hadn't just broken the law. They'd run from it. I pulled out my phone, opened my GIS overlay, and zoomed in. Red lines glowed across the screen. My parcel like a spine along the ridge, every contour as familiar as my own hand. The little blue dot me sat so far inside the boundary it was almost insulting. There's a particular anger that comes when you see someone lay claim to what you've sweated and paid for. But anger is a blunt tool. Evidence is a scalpel. I hit record. North Ridge. 10:14 a.m. structure located approximately 47 miles inside property line. My voice sounded level, almost mild. Ellie says my legal tone always does, that it's what a man sounds like while honing a knife. As I narrated, another thought slid in. This build wasn't hiding. It wasn't tucked behind trees or sunk into a hollow. It stood in an open clearing, bold and unashamed. That kind of confidence has a name, the belief that consequences are always for other people. I ended the recording, pocketed the phone, and breathed the cold air until my temper cooled into something sharper. Whoever put this here had made a statement. A warning. Maybe a test. Whatever they meant by it, it was deliberate. And it was absolutely unlawful. Before heading back, I looked once more at the place. Bright timber, gleaming glass, a monument to entitlement. Pretty, yes, but beauty doesn't legalize trespass. And the mountain doesn't bargain. There are two ways people respond to crisis, with feelings or with protocol. Feelings burn out fast. Protocol wins hearings. I texted Ellie, North Ridge. Bring the drone. Her answer came 4 seconds later. On my way. Some people marry for romance. I married the only woman I've ever met who could cross-examine a tree. While I waited, I walked the perimeter, snapping photos, pacing distances, logging timestamps. Not from nerves, from habit. The same discipline that kept me upright through years of land use fights and injunction hearings. The ridge rewards people who pay attention. By the time Ellie's SUV wound up the trail, the sun had climbed high enough to splash the whole cottage in unforgiving light. She stepped out, took one long look, and said with the kind of calm irritation that scares people more than shouting, "Someone made a very expensive mistake." I handed her the GPS overlay. She checked the coordinates, jaw clamped, features sharp as cut stone. "Matches," she said. "Structure is fully inside your parcel." "Mark, this isn't even close." She set the drone case on the hood and started calibrating. Her hands moved with the muscle memory of a woman who spent half her life prepping exhibits. The drone rose with a soft whine. As it circled, Ellie squinted at the screen. "Mark," she said. "Look at the stumps." I stepped beside her. On the monitor, 3 clean, pale circles. Not blowdowns. Not stormfall. Old-growth oaks, cut flush. "They dropped your oaks," Ellie said, her voice tightening. "For that deck. That's timber trespass. Treble damages." Something low in me coiled. You can't replant a century in a weekend. Trees like that outlive you if you let them. If you don't, they die in minutes to satisfy somebody's view. The drone swept wider, catching every angled board, every stump, every scar. "This wasn't rushed," Ellie said quietly. "They had a schedule." I moved to stand in front of the house as she positioned the drone to face me. It hovered there, calm, impersonal, like a mechanical notary. Time to nail down the foundation of the record. Lawyers call it contemporaneous observation, saying what's in front of you while it's in front of you. I looked straight at the lens. "My name is Mark Hale. I am the sole legal owner of parcel ID 4492, North Ridge Sector. Today is October 14th. The structure behind me is an unauthorized encroachment. It has no permit, no easement, and it is erected entirely on private land documented in Deed Book 12, page 405. Ellie held the drone steady while I walked along the deck and pointed out survey markers. This parcel has been surveyed 5 times, 2003, 2009, 2014, 2018, and 2021. All surveys concur on the boundaries. No recorded easements, encroachments, or permissions exist for any structure in this location. If I am mistaken, I will accept responsibility. I am not mistaken. Ellie brought the drone down, replayed the footage, and let out a slow, measured breath. This wasn't confusion, she said. They paid for something they knew they didn't own. Then we're not up against ignorance, I replied. We're up against intent. She slipped her fingers through mine. Solidarity, not comfort. Let's finish the record, she said. We only get to build it right the first time. As the drone lifted again, capturing house, stump, and boundary in one broad sweep, I felt the old gears click into place inside me. A mountain resident became a state attorney again. Not angry, not shaken, just precise. Whoever built this hadn't just trespassed. They'd handed me my opening argument. There's a moment when suspicion hardens into certainty and the path forward shows itself in painful clarity. That's where I was standing. After Ellie confirmed every clip, I called Joe. You want me to bring tools? He asked, voice as calm as his diesel. Bring the excavator trailer. No debate, just trust. Then I called Tom. When I laid out the situation, he went silent. Not confused, not outraged, just processing. You want it down today? He asked. If the law allows immediate abatement. It will, he said. I'll bring the grade kit. Ellie watched me hang up. You're pulling everyone in fast. No, I said. I'm pulling in the facts. By the time Joe's engine growled up the ridge, the sun had burned every shadow away from under the deck. Tom arrived seconds later, moving with the slow care of a man who's watched buildings lose arguments with gravity. He didn't admire the view. He went straight to a support post, crouched and swept aside dirt. Mark, he said after a moment, you're going to want to look at this. I knelt beside him. He rapped the concrete with his knuckles. Shallow pour, 8 inches, maybe, no rebar. Sitting on loose fill. Looks like they just dumped whatever they scraped off the slope. He blew out sharply. This isn't a home, Tom said. It's a booby trap. He walked the line of beams, tracking the load path, his expression darkening with each step. One good snow on that roof and this whole deck shears off. Anyone underneath it dies. Joe gave a low whistle. Ellie's eyes narrowed, not theatrically, but with a focused anger. Illegal was one thing. Lethal was another. At that point, immediate abatement wasn't just legally defensible. It was necessary. Joe dusted his hands. So, what's the play, boss? People think the law lives on paper. Out here, it lives in instructions. I turned to them with the same voice I used to use on junior prosecutors and fresh deputies. Listen up. Under the doctrine of abatement, we're authorized to remove this hazard. It's unpermitted, it's trespass, and it's structurally unsound. We do this by the book. Document everything. No shortcuts, no guesses. Safety first. The trees stay untouched. They're evidence for timber trespass. I pointed at the deck. Start there. Controlled removal. Slow. No debris thrown downhill. We treat this like a live-fire training exercise. Tom adjusted his cap. Copy. We'll dissect it, not smash it. Joe cracked his knuckles. Let's make it tidy. No bravado. No yelling. Just 3 people who knew the mountain, knew the law, and knew each other. Ellie lifted the drone controller and pressed record. Rolling, she said. Joe climbed into the excavator. Tom checked the hydraulics on his smaller machine. Their engines built to a steady rumble. I felt that hard, clean certainty settle in my bones again. This wasn't revenge. It wasn't a tantrum. It was procedure. And procedure, in the hands of someone who understands it, cuts deep. Demolition done right isn't chaos. It's choreography. Joe eased the boom forward until the bucket hovered in front of the deck. like it was asking permission. Then he lowered it, just enough pressure to feel the structure. The wood answered with a long, weary groan. Tom took up position at the rear. "Feather it," he called. "Let the beams show you where they want to go." A sharp crack. The first beam failed exactly where Tom had predicted. Another shift, another deep complaint from the timbers. Ellie circled the drone, capturing the building as it sagged and surrendered, the ground giving back what had been stolen from it. Joe nudged the bucket against an interior wall, just tapping to open a controlled break. He was doing surgery, not swinging wild. The next tap did something none of us expected. The drywall split with a hard, sharp snap. Dust billowed out in a pale cloud. Joe froze the boom. Tom shouted, "Hold it!" I stepped closer, hand over my mouth as the dust drifted. When the air thinned, something behind the torn panel winked in the sunlight. Metal, box-shaped, buried in the studs. Tom climbed down and jogged over, eyes locked on the glint. He brushed aside a slab of drywall and revealed a small steel utility box, built into the frame, hidden by design. He tapped it with a knuckle. Somebody didn't want this found. Ellie brought the drone down, hovering behind us, still recording. Tom pulled his multi-tool and backed the screws out one by one, slow and careful, like the box was evidence, which it was. The lid creaked as he lifted it. Inside was a folder. Thin, clean, too pristine for a construction site, too precise to have been forgotten. He handed it to me. Sketches, blueprint fragments, lot outlines, future builds not just for this cottage, but for the ridge. 3 arrows radiating outward, marking additional units, paths, decking. In neat, confident handwriting at the bottom, Phase 2 HOA Expansion Initiative. Ellie sucked in a breath. They weren't just building illegally, she said. They were planning to expand illegally. Tom snorted. Good thing Phase 1 wouldn't have survived its first snowfall. I slid the pages into a plastic evidence bag from my ATV kit. Old habits die hard. This isn't just trespass, I said. It's premeditated annexation. Joe called from the cab. We greenlit to keep going, Mark? Keep going. Same plan. Controlled. He eased the bucket down again. The deck gave way in slow, heavy chunks, each collapse logged from above. This wasn't rage. This was correction. The Porsche looked wrong on the ridge road. Too shiny, too low, too accustomed to asphalt and parking garages. It lurched over the rocks like a pampered dog dragged into the brush. Before the dust even settled, the driver door flew open. She stepped out like the mountain had personally slighted her. Platinum bob, beige pantsuit, oversized sunglasses, heels, actual heels, sinking into pine duff. I didn't know her name yet, but every HOA has one. Her gaze swept the torn-down deck, the machines, the dust hanging in the air, the men standing where her dream house used to be. Her face hardened. Disbelief congealed into fury. She jabbed a finger at me like she'd discovered the villain in her story. What? She snapped. Do you think you're doing? I took a long sip from my thermos and let quiet answer first. People like her can't stand quiet. It makes them hear themselves. Afternoon, I said. You lost. Lost. Her voice went up half an octave. Lost? This? She flung her arm at the damage. Is my property. Joe leaned out of the excavator cab, eyebrows climbing. Tom crossed his arms, planted and patient. I didn't raise my voice. Ma'am, I said evenly, this structure sits on my land. Her laugh was short and brittle. That's impossible. We had full HOA approval. I'm the president. I authorized this development. Ellie, eyes on the drone monitor, didn't even bother to look up. Your HOA authority ends half a mile downhill, she said. You're well outside your jurisdiction. Karen, because that's when we finally learned her name, ripped off her sunglasses like that might move a property line. I have documentation, she insisted. This land was approved for expansion. You can't demolish private property. I gestured at the sagging wall. Private property has to be legally held first. This isn't. She wobbled toward me on her heels. All command and no traction. You stop this right now, she ordered. If you don't, I will have you arrested. Tom gave a quiet snort. Arrested for what? He asked. Standing on his own land? She spun on him. And who are you? Guy who can spot a collapse hazard from 20 feet, Tom said. And your house here was one. She dismissed him with a flick of her hand and turned back to me, eyes blazing. This home cost over $600,000, she hissed. You're paying for every inch. I didn't blink. No, I said. You are. She sucked in a breath. Not from fear, from disbelief at being pushed back. Ellie spoke then, scalpel sharp and steady. We have GPS overlays, drone footage, the recorded deed, photos of the stumps you cut, and your Phase 2 HOA expansion initiative plans, hidden in that wall. Karen went very still. Her lips parted a fraction. You can't prove anything, she said, but the fire in her voice wavered. Ellie tipped the drone toward her. Everything you say is being recorded. Karen's expression twisted. She looked like someone used to winning arguments by sheer volume, suddenly realizing the audience had changed. Then she bolted for her Porsche, yanked the door open, and grabbed her phone. You're finished, she snapped into it. I'm calling the sheriff. And my husband. That last word landed differently. Not affectionate. Strategic. Power, money, connections, muscle. She paced along the gravel, spitting broken sentences into the call. Joe and Tom both glanced at me. Well? Tom asked. We keep going, I said. She's not the last storm walking up this ridge. The mountain proved me right a minute later. A deeper rumble rolled up from the trail. Too smooth for old county trucks. Too heavy for a neighbor's pickup. A black Tahoe broke through the trees, grill gleaming like polished teeth. It bounced up the trail with the assurance of a vehicle that had never been told no. All 3 doors blew open at once. First out, the man from the back. Tall, square-jawed. Leather jacket a size too small, like he wanted the seams to prove a point. Gym-built, not work-built. Second, the larger one. Neck like a fence post. Arms stretching his sleeves. The kind of man people hire when they don't understand you can't buy real authority at a gym. Then the driver. Salt and pepper hair. Polo tucked into expensive slacks. Gold watch. Wedding band. The husband, David. Karen practically sprinted to him. David, they're still doing it, she cried. They're tearing down our home. He looked me over like he was picking which wall to punch through first. You the one? He demanded, stepping close. You the idiot who thinks he can destroy private property and walk away? I'm the owner of this land, I said. And I'm the one remedying an illegal structure sitting half a mile inside my boundary. Karen pointed at me like she was dropping a match on gasoline. He verbally assaulted me. He threatened me. He demolished our home like a psycho. Lady, Joe muttered under his breath. That deck assaulted itself. The tall guard didn't wait for explanation. He closed the gap in 4 long strides and shoved me hard. My boots skidded on the gravel. I rocked back, then righted myself. Tom was on the ground before I fully steadied, stepping between us, hand out, palm up. Not happening, he said, tone flat. The big guy squared up on Tom, chest puffed, fists coiled. Don't let them touch me, Karen screamed. This is our property. David glared at me, face flushing. You're finished, he snarled. You hear me? Finished. You think you can bully my wife? I brushed dust off my shirt. You're trespassing, I said. Your man just initiated physical contact on camera. You're escalating a situation already under full documentation. He blinked, not because he understood, but because calm irritates men like him. The first guard lunged again. Joe dropped from his cab like he'd been waiting for an excuse to stretch. The guard came in swinging. Joe didn't hit him. He absorbed the impact, turned, and locked the man's arm in a hold that made him grunt in surprise. Tom intercepted the second guard, blocking him and pinning him against the half-collapsed railing with quiet efficiency that looked suspiciously like buried training. Then it devolved into real chaos. Not movie chaos. The sloppy, graceless kind fueled by ego and bad timing. Gravel flew. Dust swirled. Karen screamed in overlapping pitches. David shouted legal words stripped of context. Ellie never stopped recording. "Keep the drone overhead," I told her between breaths. "Get the initiations. All of them." She shifted angles with the detachment of a surgeon. Guard 1 landed a wild punch on Joe's shoulder. Joe locked him down again, solid as a gate post. Guard 2 tried to bull past Tom. Tom held him with almost bored precision. David swung at me. I stepped aside. His own momentum planted him headfirst into a pile of shingles. He hit the ground, sputtering through a mouthful of grit. "Did you see that?" Karen shrieked. "He attacked my husband." Ellie zoomed in on David sprawled in the mess. "He tripped," she said calmly. "I've got 3 angles of it." The fight sagged, not into peace, but into embarrassment. Everyone felt how ridiculous they looked. Everyone except Karen. She was frantic now, rifling through her purse until she yanked out a crisp folder. The second I saw it, my instincts sharpened. Too clean. Too convenient. "Look!" she screamed, thrusting it at me, at the drone, at anyone. "Here's the agreement. Here's the proof. He signed this." The papers hit my chest. I let them, then pinched them between 2 fingers. The drone drifted closer with a soft hum. I didn't even need to fully open them to see the problem. Karen kept yelling, "See? It's legal. This proves everything." I flipped the page. The signature line bore my name. The strokes were familiar because they were copied. High-resolution print of my deed signature. No ink texture. No pressure marks. Forgery. David scraped gravel off his slacks and straightened, trying to reclaim the pose of a man in control. "There," Karen said triumphantly. "Now what do you say?" I angled the paper toward the drone. "This signature," I said, "was lifted from Deed Book 12, page 405. It isn't original ink. It's a digital cut and paste." I held it up for the camera. "And you've just handed it to me voluntarily on video." Color left Karen's face. The air turned heavy. Tom let his grip loosen. Joe stepped back. The guards froze between shame and confusion. David stared at his wife like he'd just seen an invoice he couldn't pay. And from the distance, sirens. 3 of them, climbing hard for the ridge. Ellie glanced at me. "You ready?" she asked. "I was ready the moment they broke ground," I said. Sirens sound different in the mountains. They ricochet off the timber, echo along the ridge, rolling ahead of themselves like a warning. When the first sheriff's cruiser cleared the last bend, dust from the scuffle still hung in the air like smoke over a burn pile. 3 vehicles pulled into the clearing with measured precision. No panic. No screeching heroics. This was a department that liked its facts clean. Deputy Miller stepped out first. Tall, mid-50s, broad shoulders, a jaw that had seen enough nonsense to be tired of it. Not a hothead, not a soft negotiator, just a man who showed up, watched, and decided. He took in the cottage remains, the resting excavators, the open Tahoe, Karen nearly vibrating, David sullen and dusty, the 2 guards suddenly very quiet, and Ellie's drone hovering like a mechanical witness. Then he looked at me. "Morning, Mark." "Morning, Deputy." Karen rushed him like he was the last lifeboat off a sinking ship. "Officer, arrest them. All of them," she screamed, pointing at us. "They assaulted us. They destroyed our home. They—" Miller lifted one hand. "Not aggressive. Just reclaiming the room." "Ma'am, you need to slow down." "Slow down? They ambushed us. They—" He didn't answer her. His eyes shifted to me. "Your side." I gestured toward Ellie. "We have drone footage, ground video, GPS overlays, parcel documentation, evidence of unpermitted construction, trespass, and timber damage," I said, then held up the plastic evidence sleeve. "And a contract Mrs. Whitmore just handed me." Karen sucked in a breath. "That is my legal agreement." Miller took the sleeve, turned it toward the light, and studied it. No theatrics, just practiced eyes on a page. "It's flat," he said mildly. "No impression. Looks like a clean print. Not a hand-signed original. Karen's eyes jumped too fast. David's jaw clenched. Ellie zoomed the drone in. Miller slid the paper back into the sleeve and sealed it. "If you're claiming this as a binding contract," he said, tone firming, "we'll need to see the actual ink version later. Not a copy." Karen opened her mouth, closed it, then floundered. David stepped forward, reaching for his old confidence. "Officer, this man attacked us. We defended ourselves." Miller raised that same hand. "We're going to review the footage." He gave Ellie a nod. "You mentioned timestamps?" "Yes, sir." She handed him the controller. Overhead first, then ground. He watched everything. The shove, the lunge, the trip into the shingles, the wild swings, Karen jamming the contract into my chest. He didn't react much, just watched like a man who trusts evidence more than he trusts voices. When he finished, he looked at Karen. "Ma'am, this footage does not support your account." "They faked it," she blurted. "Altered. Manipulated. Live metadata," Ellie said crisply. "Untouched." Miller nodded once. "I'm not letting anyone frame anyone," he said. "I'm evaluating evidence. That's my work." Silence settled. Heavy. Final. "No arrests today," he said at last. "This is both a civil matter and potentially a criminal one. I'll forward everything to the district attorney. There will be follow-up." Karen gasped like someone had punched the air from her chest. "What? After everything he destroyed?" "That's procedure, ma'am," he said. Then he turned to me. "Mark, I recommend you suspend further demolition until the DA's office reviews." "I'll comply," I said. Compliance is a weapon, too. Karen's voice turned feral. "You think this is over? I'll have every agency in this state on your land. Every one." I didn't answer. Ellie did. "The drone picked that up too, Karen." Karen froze, and behind her eyes I saw it, the spark of fear that drives people from reckless into stupid. 24 hours later, the EPA knocked on my workshop door. The knock came early, too precise for neighbors, too formal for a lost hiker. 3 raps. Pause. 2 more. I wiped my hands on a rag and opened the door. 2 men in dark windbreakers stood on the gravel, badges at their belts, patches on their shoulders. "Sir," the taller one said, lifting a folder, "we're with the Environmental Protection Agency. We received an anonymous report of possible hazardous waste dumping on this parcel." My stomach didn't drop. Twisted. Anonymous report. Less than a day after Karen promised to unleash the alphabet soup. "What kind of waste?" I asked. He opened the folder. Insulation debris, unsealed solvents, drywall dust, possible contaminated materials. Specifically in the ridge area where, we're told, a structure was recently demolished. Of course she picked that spot. Freshly disturbed ground. Equipment tracks. Plenty of cover to tuck trash in overnight. "You're welcome to inspect," I said. "But you'll want your cameras rolling." He blinked. "Sir, you've had recent activity up there. You'll want a record of your record." His partner nodded slowly. "Fair enough." Ellie appeared behind me, tying her hair back. "Which section?" she asked. The agent pointed on a marked map. "North Ridge. The clearing." We led them up the trail. Early light angled between trunks, turning the path into a stage. And right on cue, the set appeared. Black contractor bags, broken drywall, spilled buckets. A barrel tucked behind a pine as if the guilty party got tired halfway through hiding it. Ellie murmured, "Staged." I crouched by the drywall. The cuts were machine clean, not torn by our bucket. The EPA man knelt beside me. "Did you or anyone working for you leave this here?" "No." "Can you prove that?" Ellie lifted the drone controller. "Yes, we have continuous demolition footage from yesterday. Nothing like this on site when we left." I pointed at the dirt. "These footprints aren't ours. Wrong tread patterns. Wrong sizes." The agent grimaced. "We still have to collect samples," he said. "Regulations say we may need to issue a preliminary violation while it's investigated." There it was, The shadow Karen wanted hanging over my name. Not a fine, not yet, just a cloud. I didn't argue. Arguing muddies things. Procedure clears them. Do what you need, I said. We'll cooperate fully. Ellie recorded the entire inspection. They bagged, labeled, photographed, logged coordinates. Halfway through, another engine came up the trail. Tom. He climbed out of his truck slower than usual, still stiff from the scuffle, carrying a metal case. You're going to want to see this, he said. And you are? One agent asked. Retired structural inspector, Tom replied. And a guy who knows a frame-up when he sees one. He popped the case open. Inside, a small hard drive and a folded topo map. This is from Phil's trail cam on the East Ridge, he said. Ellie hooked the drive to her tablet. Grainy night vision video appeared. Midnight. A big SUV backing off the service road into the trees. Same model as David's Tahoe. Same rack. Same little dent under the rear bumper. Two figures got out. Hauled bags. Dumped construction debris. Rolled a barrel into place. The timestamp glowed in the corner. The lead agent leaned in. Why didn't you show us this earlier? You hadn't asked, I said. Ellie froze the frame as one man hefted a bag. His hoodie read ELO HOE in big block letters. The agents shared a look, a mix of irritation and reluctant respect. Tom crossed his arms. You were about to tag Mark, he said. For trash that appeared after dark. The agent sighed. We'll need copies of this. You'll have them by noon, Ellie said. And we'll be filing a report, the agent continued. But not against you. Against who? I asked. Whoever filed a false environmental complaint and dumped this material. That's a federal offense. A knot in my chest loosened. Not into relief, but into momentum. On the way back down, Tom clapped my shoulder. She picked the wrong mountain, Mark. And the wrong lawyer, Ellie added. I nodded, but my thoughts were already elsewhere. The next fight wasn't about trash or trail cams. It was about motive. In court, motive buries people. The morning after the EPA left, the ridge felt tight. Not calmer, just braced. Ellie sat at the kitchen table when I came down. Laptop open. Glasses low on her nose. Coffee forgotten. She wasn't just building a case. She was constructing inevitability. Folders lay in ordered stacks. Screenshots labeled. GPS overlays aligned. Drone stills frozen with timestamps in neat captions. Her headings marched across the screen in calm, lethal font. Trespass. Timber damage, old growth. Unpermitted structure. Assault initiators. Forgery contract. EPA false complaint. Illegal dumping federal. Prepping for trial? I asked. Founding a new religion, she said without looking up. Difference is, court doesn't hand out forgiveness. Around 9:15, Tom rolled in with a thick envelope and his metal case. County office opens at 10, he said. Figured you'd want the autopsy before I file it. He spread his findings across the table. Structural diagrams. Soil reports. Load calculations. His handwriting hugged the margins like he was writing commandments. It wasn't just sloppy work. It was criminal negligence dressed in cedar siding. Shallow footings on uncompacted fill. No rebar. Deck ledger board wrong. So wrong it might as well have been signed. To whom it may concern, disaster. Roof load overshooting safety by 30%. The entire shell perched on a slip-prone grade. Tom tapped one spot on the drawing. One decent storm and this snaps off the hill, he said. Anyone under the deck dies quickly. Anyone on the deck goes for the ride. And they'd have blamed us for the collapse, Ellie said. That's what sticks. Tom nodded. Which is why I'm sending this to county engineering and copying the DA. They hate it when amateurs build grenades. At 10:40, a white sedan rolled up the drive. A county courier stepped out with a stack of envelopes bound together like a bundle of bad news. You can feel a lawsuit before you open it. I took one, passed one to Ellie, gave Tom another just to hold. Destruction of property. Assault. Harassment. Emotional distress. Intentional sabotage. They'd thrown every word they could think of at the wall, hoping one would stick. Ellie read quietly, eyes narrowing. "They're arguing feelings," she said. "Not facts." Tom snorted. Desperation never reads classy. We spent the afternoon tightening our response. Ellie indexed every file, cross-referenced clips, added Miller's notes, EPA documentation, trail cam timestamps. The porch table turned into a war board, except the lines we drew weren't troop movements, they were evidentiary chains. By dusk, the last folder snapped shut. Ellie flexed her fingers. "Excavators knock down lumber," she said. "Paperwork knocks down careers." Tom laughed. "You two scare the hell out of me." I stepped onto the porch and looked up toward the bare patch where the cottage had stood. Just open ground now. It didn't feel like victory yet. It felt like a closing argument waiting to be delivered. Then Ellie's laptop chimed. She frowned and pulled it back toward her. "That's odd," she said. "Wasn't expecting anything." One new message. No subject. Sender. board.memberprivateemail.com. A whistleblower? I asked. Only one way to find out. She opened it. Her posture changed instantly. The slow, precise shift of someone realizing the last puzzle piece has just landed on the table. "Mark," she whispered. "Come here." It was an email thread. Long, careless, and lethal. Between Karen, the contractor, and 2 HOA board members. "Karen, just build it. Don't worry about the boundary. Later. If he complains, HOA reserve fund covers legal. He can't fight us. Not with our budget. Contractor, we're definitely outside the platted HOA zone. Karen. Karen, he doesn't check the ridge often. Get it done fast. Board member. Are you sure? This feels risky. Karen, he lives up there alone. He won't push back. And if he does, we'll bury him in motions. Ellie scrolled. At the bottom sat a PDF. Proposed expansion plan, Phase 2. Multiple cottages. Extended road. All stamped over our land. Tom let out a low whistle. "This isn't incompetence," he said. "It's malice." "This is intent," Ellie said softly. "The one word judges care about more than any other." Karen hadn't misread a survey. She hadn't been conned by a contractor. She had decided the ridge was hers. Calculated that I'd roll over. Counted on HOA money to crush resistance. And someone on her own board had decided they were not going to prison with her. The wind shifted outside. The pines creaked and settled. The ridge felt like it exhaled. Ellie closed the laptop like she was shutting a case file. "Well," she said, "we just won pretrial." I didn't smile. I didn't need to. The evidence would argue for us in the morning. Karen was about to hear what the truth sounds like when it's amplified through a bench mic. The courtroom air was colder than it looked. Old wood. Old expectation. Old dust. Ellie and I sat at the defense table, aligned but not touching, like two ridges bracing the same horizon. Karen swept in behind her lawyer in black, dressed like a widow grieving a future she still thought she could resurrect. David trailed behind, the look of a man realizing he'd been betting his life on loaded dice. The judge entered and years of habit pulled the room to attention. Small woman, sharp eyes. She didn't need to raise her voice. The silence cooperated for her. Karen's attorney rose first. He launched into a broad, emotional speech about community spirit, visionary projects crushed by primitive rage, emotional trauma, unprovoked aggression. He painted Karen as the martyr of Elk Hollow and me as the crank with a bulldozer. The judge listened, but not deeply. You can see it in the set of their eyes when the words are going in and when they're just passing through. He finally sat, and Karen dabbed theatrically at the corner of one eye. Then the judge turned toward us. Response. I didn't look at the quiet attorney we'd hired just to keep paperwork clean. "I'll be representing myself, Your Honor," I said. "Mrs. Hale will handle the exhibits." A brief flicker of recognition passed through her gaze. "Proceed, Mr. Hale." I stepped to the podium with no notes. The facts were simple enough not to need them. "Exhibit A," I said. "Parcel maps, GIS overlays, and my recorded deed. The plaintiff's structure was constructed entirely on my land." Ellie brought the first slide up on the monitor. Our parcel boundaries glowed, house location pinned like a wound dead center. Exhibit B, I continued. Drone footage of the structure, including evidence of old-growth timber cut without permit. The 3 oak stumps filled the screen. No one spoke. Exhibit C, initiation of physical contact. Guards lunging, shoves, wild swings. David's independent flight into the shingles. All from 2 angles. Exhibit D, the contract Mrs. Whitmore produced as proof of my consent to construction. The clerk handed the judge the evidence sleeve. No pen pressure, I said. No stroke variation. Identical to my signature in Deed Book 12, page 405. In other words, alleged forgery. The judge finished for me, eyes on the page. I nodded once. Exhibit E, the EPA's preliminary conclusion that the debris at issue was not deposited by me or anyone working for me. Paperwork slid forward. Exhibit F, trail cam footage showing plaintiffs, or their agents, transporting and dumping construction material on my ridge after dark, followed by an anonymous EPA complaint. The HOA hoodie froze on screen. Karen's attorney leaned in close to her and whispered something that sounded a lot like regret. And finally, I said, Exhibit G. Ellie opened the email chain. I read each relevant line aloud. Just build it. Don't worry about the boundary. If he complains, HOA Reserve Fund will cover legal. He can't fight us. He doesn't check the ridge often. Get it done fast. He lives up there alone. Even if he pushes back, we'll bury him in motions. You could feel the room change. Air thickened. Jaws set. I closed the binder. No further defense, Your Honor. I sat, not triumphant, just finished. The judge leaned back, slipped off her glasses, and fixed Karen with a gaze that belonged on a cliff face. Mrs. Whitmore, she said, in 20 years on this bench, I have seen honest mistakes, gross negligence, and plain ignorance. It is rare that I see such a deliberate attempt to weaponize both an HOA and the court system against a private landowner. Karen folded in on herself. Your claims are dismissed with prejudice, the judge continued. That means you may not refile them. Her attorney sank a few inches lower. Furthermore, she said, turning a page, given the evidence of possible forgery, perjury, illegal dumping, and misuse of HOA funds, I am referring this case file and all exhibits to the district attorney for criminal review. Color drained from Karen's face. David went faintly gray. The judge lifted her gavel. Judgment for the defendant. Full reimbursement of legal costs ordered. She paused, looked at me. And Mr. Hale? Yes, Your Honor? Thank you for removing that structure before it killed someone. The gavel cracked like a rifle report. Court adjourned. Karen sobbed. Her attorney fumbled documents into a briefcase. David stared at the carpet like he hoped it would swallow him whole. Ellie closed our binder. Tom gave me a single, satisfied nod from the pews. For the first time since this started, I felt something like peace. Not triumph. Just the clean, simple relief of the truth winning in daylight. Outside, the air felt different. Not brighter, just honest. For once, Karen didn't barrel out behind us in a storm of shouting. She emerged slowly, leaning on David, looking like someone who finally understood the mountain she'd been trying to conquer wasn't mine. It was called justice. Her attorney avoided her eyes. His briefcase hung at his side like it had gained 20 pounds. Ellie squeezed my hand. Firm. That's it, she said. You did it. We did it, I said. Tom joined us, tucking his structural report back into its case with the quiet satisfaction of a man whose warnings had been heard. But the story didn't stop at the courthouse steps. By evening, the news had run through Elk Hollow like sparks through dry needles. The HOA board was in freefall. They called an emergency session before sunset that, according to 3 different neighbors who phoned Ellie, turned into open revolt. People who'd kept their heads down for years finally spoke up. Not timidly, loudly, and with the exhausted relief of folks who just learned they weren't crazy. By 9 p.m., an official email went out. Effective immediately, Karen Whitmore is removed as president of the Elk Hollow HOA. No mention of fraud, forged papers, or barrels in the woods. They didn't have to say it. The silence around her name said enough. The next morning, the county followed with its own bulletin. Short, sharp. HOA jurisdiction does not extend beyond Ridgeline Road. Hale property is not under HOA governance. The county map updated online. A red boundary appeared, bright, unmistakable, cleanly separating their world from mine. Ellie printed it, stuck it to the fridge with a magnet, and tapped the corner like she was tempted to frame it. The DA moved quickly. A formal investigation opened into forgery, perjury, illegal dumping, misuse of HOA funds, and conspiracy to commit property fraud. David temporarily stepped away from his law firm. Everyone knew what that really meant. The two hired toughs were picked up quietly. One had a suspended license from a previous assault. That didn't help him now. The legal fallout was predictable. The human fallout surprised me. Neighbors I barely knew came by. Some with pie. Some with beer. Some with stories they'd been too nervous to share before. An older woman hugged Ellie and whispered, "We were scared of her too." A man from inside HOA lines said, "I never voted for her. Should have spoken up sooner." A young couple left a note on our porch. "Thank you for standing your ground. You helped all of us." The moment I knew the ground had truly shifted came at the gathering Ellie insisted on. No speeches, no banners. Just food, people, and the quiet gratitude of having lived through a storm. We held it right where the cottage had stood. The ground was flat, clean, and honest again. Tom hauled ribs. Joe manned the grill. Somebody brought a Bluetooth speaker. Kids tore around the tree shadows. The fire pit glowed at the center like a steady heart. That's when Deputy Miller appeared. Not in uniform, just jeans, boots, and a plate holding 3 ribs like an offering. He drifted over to where Tom and I were standing by the fire. "Good turnout," he said. "Good people," I answered. He watched the flames a moment, then lowered his voice. "County's re-examining 3 other ELO projects down south," he said. "We're seeing the same pattern. Bad permits, soft boundaries, corners cut everywhere. It's not pretty." Tom groaned and bit into a rib. "Knew it," he said. "Idiots always work in flocks." Miller half smiled. "We may need outside help. Someone who knows land law inside and out." He glanced at me. "And a structural guy who can spot a fraud foundation from the road." Tom elbowed me lightly. "Depends on the pay," he said around a mouthful. I studied the fire, sparks twisting up into the dark. Little burning flecks, carried on the breeze, disappearing into the tree-line like tiny, honest verdicts. "Let me think on it," I said. "No rush," Miller replied. "But this Karen mess? It isn't unique. Some folks have gotten real comfortable bending rules up here." He wandered off toward the food line. Tom watched him go, then looked at me sideways. "You're not going to sit this one out," he said. "You're not built that way." I didn't argue. I didn't have to. Sometimes the next chapter doesn't knock. It just pulls up a chair beside your fire. Night thickened. The music softened. Stars punched through the dark one by one. People laughed, finally, without looking over their shoulders. Ellie moved through the crowd, lighter than I'd seen her in weeks. Kids roasted marshmallows, faces glowing orange in the firelight. Eventually she came to my side and leaned into my shoulder. "Feels like the mountain can breathe again," she whispered. "Yeah," I said. "It does." She raised her glass. "To standing your ground," she said, "and making damn sure no one builds on it but you." The people within earshot echoed the toast. The fire cracked. Night sounds folded in around us. Owls, wind in the needles, distant creak. And under it all, something softer. Peace. Somewhere beyond the circle of firelight, past where the illegal cottage had once tried to root itself, the mountain listened and approved.